Have you ever noticed that God does not always do what you want him to do? Have you noticed this? God is disobedient. And I say that with a smile because the arrogance of us as human beings is that we really do, I think oftentimes when it really comes down to the core, we really believe that, we know best and God should be doing what it is that we think, and he should do it when we think he should do it. And so he doesn't obey our whims, and he's really not a genie that you rub the bottle, he comes out and you get him to do what you want him to do. And I think so many times that there's a little nugget of that somewhere deep down inside of us that is so surprised when God does not do what we assumed he would do, what we thought he would do, what we think is right, or in the timing that we would do it. And even the most godly people in the world at times are absolutely mystified by the fact that God is doing something that seems counterintuitive, or that he's not doing what we think that he should do. And it can be really confusing. We can come away really not knowing what's up. The world is a confusing place. I'm politically, economically, with regards to races, with regards to genders, with regards to health, with regards to everything that goes. It's just a mystifying place. There's great and terrible, gratuitous suffering in the world. People are not basically good. People do really bad things to other people. And it spills over, and God does not erase all that by suspending everybody in animation so they can't do anything naughty to one another, right? The world is a mystifying place, and you can come away like going, I'm not sure how this event in my life, or this thing that's happening over here in the world, or this thing that's happening to my friends, it just doesn't fit. It's like a puzzle piece. It's just like an empty puzzle piece. You can't figure out where it fits, If you ever get a puzzle and you look at a piece of it and you're like, I have no idea what that is or where that goes. All right? I just don't know. It's got some blue on it. It's funny because I took this out of a Noah's Ark puzzle because I'm a Christian, so I only do Christian puzzles. And, we don't want to do any evil puzzles, right? Like puzzles that, I don't know what, but nudie puzzles. Hey, has anybody done porno puzzles? Fun to church of Satan. So you can look at a puzzle piece and you don't know, what it is. And a life is like that. There's so many times that there's things that happen with our, like I said, with our economics, or that happen with our health, or that happen with other people, or things in the world that you just go, oh my gosh, horrible things are happening in the world. There's great famine, and in warring countries where people can't get food. There are people, stockpiling and building more and more nuclear devices that sooner or later someone's going to blow one off, and it's going to be enormous suffering. You're going to go, God, I don't understand what you're doing. You look at this puzzle piece, you go, I don't know. I just don't know where it fits. And it's like that in our personal life, regardless if you're a follower of Jesus or not. And I'm going to tell you, when I first came to Jesus, here's what I thought. I thought that now that I said yes to Jesus, that I had God, not that I was on Team Jesus, but he was on Team Chuck. I really thought, oh, Jesus is on Team Chuck now. So that means I got nothing to worry about. Everything's going to go great. We're not going to have any sickness. We're going to have enough money. Everything's going to be great because Jesus is on Team Chuck. I had it all backwards. I didn't recognize I'm on Team Jesus, but that does not remove me from everything that happens in the world now because I chose the right team. Now, sickness doesn't happen. Now, suffering doesn't happen, or it does to other people because they deserve it because they haven't chosen to be on Team Jesus. So this world can be really puzzling, and even people who really love God can come away mystified sometimes. I don't know what God is doing. John the Baptist, according to Jesus, was the greatest of all, he was the greatest person ever born to women. So he's talking about the Old Testament before the New Testament covenant came in, and he said, there's nobody that's been greater than John the Baptist. John the Baptist was a true believer. He gave up everything. He lived in the desert. He ate grasshoppers because he was so poor. He wore like camel hair clothes, etchy, horrible clothes. He was isolated. He was kind of a cranky dude, very Old Testament prophet guy. He's, angry and yelling and really waiting for the Messiah to come because he wanted to see things cleaned up in Jerusalem. And he believed in Jesus in a deep way. I'm going to show you a little video clip, and I want you to actually watch it and think, what are the things that John says that lets you know that he believes that Jesus is the Savior, the Messiah, the one who is to come?
The next day, John saw Jesus coming to him.
There is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is the one I was talking about when I said, a man is coming after me, but he is greater than I am, because he existed before I was born. I did not know who he would be, but I came baptizing with water in order to make him known to the people of Israel.
And John gave this testimony.
I saw the Spirit come down like a dove from heaven and stay on him. I still did not know that he was the one, but God, who sent me to baptize with water, had said to me, you will see the Spirit come down and stay on a man. He is the one who baptizes with the Holy Spirit. I have seen it, and I tell you that he is the Son of God.
How much did John believe that Jesus was the Messiah, the coming one? Absolutely. He was, he went on and on and on to say, look, God the Father spoke to me. He told me, when you see this one that the dove descends on and stays on, that's the one. He heard the voice of God the Father say, this is my Son, whom I love. I'm well pleased with him. He had read and was very familiar with the book of Isaiah and recognized that he was the one who was going to proclaim the coming of the Messiah. John absolutely believed, until a piece of the puzzle came into play that was so hard for him to discern how it fit with everything else. The picture just didn't make sense, that he all of a sudden started to doubt Jesus. And that's recorded in Luke chapter 7. If you have your Bible, open to verse 18. And we're leapfrogging an event that I'm going to come back to, is where Jesus raises a dead son, and we're going to connect that into chapter 8, where he raises a dead daughter. So we're going to skip over that, but that is what has just happened in the life of Jesus. Now, here's what John says. In verse 18, it says, John's disciples told him about all these things. He was saying, man, we've seen Jesus doing this amazing stuff. He just raised somebody from the dead. He did some amazing teaching. We saw this thing where he healed somebody from a distance. They came and they told John this. Now, here's what you need to know. Luke doesn't mention it here, but the reason that they mention it to John, and John doesn't know himself, is because John is in jail. He's in prison. So he calls two of his disciples, and he sent them to Jesus to ask him a question. What's happening? Are you the Messiah, or is somebody else coming? Do you hear what he says? He's got a question. Now, this man who is a true believer, I tell you, he is the Son of God, the Messiah. I know it. Now, something has happened. All of a sudden, he's sending others to say, or he's unsure. He's mystified by what's going on. There's a puzzle piece that doesn't fit in with the rest of the picture, and he can't figure out what is going on. And some of that is because there's three things, at least, that I can discern maybe going on here with John. Now, I don't know John. I didn't ask him personally. I don't know what's going on inside of his head, but there are probably three things that connect to the kinds of things that happen with us when we're mystified, when Jesus doesn't seem to be behaving the way we think he would, when God isn't doing what we think he should, or he did something that we think that he shouldn't. See, what was happening with John is that he had personal presumptions. That's the first of these three things that could be in play here. He had personal presumptions. He assumed certain things about Jesus and what God would do through him. If you look at John's teaching, he says things like, hey, guess what? All you religious people, the Jewish religious people that were all caught up in religion and were drifted far from God, and the leaders were really kind of spiritually abusing the people. He says, just so you know, you better get your stuff together, because the axe is at the root of the trees. That's what he saw. He said, hey man, I'll tell you what's going to happen. God is going to come and he's going to bring judgment. He's going to take all the chaff from the wheat and he's going to and he's going to like burn it up. So he's talking about all this like almost apocalyptic kind of talk. And he's saying, this is what God is doing. The coming one is coming, and he is going to judge, and he's going to bring his axe, and he's going to bring fire. And Jesus didn't do it. Jesus did not behave as expected. John's presumption was that when the Messiah came, that he would kick out the Romans, that he would refurbish the Jewish religious system. John was a bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament. He was the one who was really the last Old Testament prophet and the first New Testament prophet. He was in a strange place. He knew the book of Isaiah, saw his role in there. But Jesus was not behaving correctly. He was not doing what was assumed or presumed, the things that he had expected, what God would do, when he would do it, and how he would do it. All he knew was the Messiah was not bringing the kingdom of God and reclamation to the whole system that he was looking at, and it messed him up. This one who said, he is the Son of God. I heard the voice of the Father. I saw the Holy Spirit in the form of the dove. God has told me. I know it. I've seen him. He saw what Jesus was doing, but he asks a question. Are you the one? Because the picture you're showing me does not fit. It does not fit. I'm mystified and puzzled by the fact that you've done nothing. And at this point, we're looking at about a year and a half, about maybe the halfway point in the public life of Jesus' ministry. Somewhere between a year and a half and a year. And he says, man, you've been doing stuff for a long time, and what are you doing? I'm confused. Maybe you're not who I think you are. So the first was he had personal presumptions, and so do we. When somebody who really loves Jesus becomes really sick, or they lose their job, or they lose their home, the people who really pursue Jesus, they go away to a mission field, and their wife gets killed. What do you? It doesn't. It's like this doesn't fit. There's a man I know is a missionary, and his wife was sexually assaulted. They were on mission. They were in a dangerous place. They were prayed over. They trusted God. They were doing great things. His wife went out for a run, and she was drug off into a ditch and assaulted by the very people that they had been ministering to. You go, hang on. Like, God, you're not doing what I would expect, you could imagine that they might have thought, God, I don't understand how this fits in the puzzle. Because he just does not remove all of the stuff that is the reality of the world we live in when you follow Jesus. And so he assumed that certain things were going to happen and other things weren't going to happen, and those assumptions were not met. It is human to feel this way. This week, one of the things that I really realized was I am so thankful that this passage is in the Bible, because Jesus lifts him up. Among women, there's no greater man born, right? Among women, no greater man born. And yet he had severe doubts about what God was doing, how he was doing it, when he was doing it. This elevated man, this great man that we know his name from thousands of years later, and he had real questions about God. And what's beautiful is the way that Jesus deals with him is not by rebuking him and saying, you had more reason to believe than anybody. What's the matter with John? That John, he's always been cranky, and maybe got a bad locust or something. Jesus does not do that. Jesus elevates him and says he's a great man. Did you go out to see a swaying reed? No, you didn't go out to see nothing. Did you go to see a king in his fine palace and a rock star? And he says, no. Did you go see a prophet? He goes, more than a prophet. He's the one who paves the way for me as the Messiah. See this sense of going like, God, I just don't understand. This doesn't seem to fit with anything I could see to be right or good. And my expectations of what you'll do, when you'll do it, and how you'll do it. It's my assumptions that sometimes cause me to wonder, God, I don't know, man. Is everything okay? Even John felt this way. Second thing was limited vision. John is in jail. He's in jail and he's facing execution. In fact, these are the last words of John the Baptist in the Gospel of Luke, because he is executed after this. He ran afoul of some political stuff. As a result, he ended up in jail, and he was ultimately beheaded. They cut his head off. And so he had very limited vision of what God was doing in the past, what he's doing right now, and doing in the future. What he could recognize was, right now, I would expect, if I am this prophet of God, that we would be ushering in the kingdom, and that is not what's happening. I would imagine that I would be honored and that I would be safe in doing what God has called me to do. And he went boldly, and he crossed all these lines, and as a result, he ended up in jail. And he had very limited vision because all he could see right now was, man, I'm locked up. Jesus is not, there's no axe, there's no fire. What the heck is going on? His limited vision was to say, since Jesus is not doing it right now, I suspect he's not going to do it. It's, are you the one? Are you the one who, or is somebody else coming to do? Now, notice it's interesting. He didn't say, I don't believe in God. What he said is, I'm just not sure what God is doing here, or if Jesus is doing the right things or not. He had very limited vision. All he could see was what was happening in front of him right now, not recognizing that Jesus had this plan that was greater and overarching through time that had to do not with making those things happen at that moment. Will Jesus do those things? Absolutely. Has he done them now in time? No. And that tripped John up, and that trips you and I up. You can love God, you can follow God, you can serve God, and you can say, but why is this happening to this one I love, or to other people that I know, or why is this happening in the world right now? I know that one thing that is true is that God tells us that he brings all things around to the good for those who love Jesus. Not for everybody else. Has no promise to everybody who rejects him, pushes him away. Never says, I'm going to make everything right for you. But he says, for those of you who trust me and follow me, for people like John, for people like you and I who say, I do not trust you, Lord, he says, even those things that are bad, that are wrong, that are hurtful, that happen because the world is so broken, I will, in my time, I will make them right. I will use them for your good and your benefit. I have no idea how that works sometimes. Do you? You ever been where you're like, I have no idea how any good could ever come out of this situation? You're like, this is impossible. Most of you know my dad, Gene. He was on fire when he was 21. He got completely disfigured. He lost both his arms. His life has been marked by that. He's 87. He's still alive, still cruising along, and choosing to live with joy. But I wonder sometimes what it was like for his mom and his three brothers on the day they got the call. Your son was in an accident. He's been burned over 95% of his body. There's no way he'll live. He's in excruciating pain. You need to get to Pennsylvania to say goodbye to him. And so he suffered, it's 15 years in the hospital, 1,500 surgeries, I think he said. He just on and on and on and on, and lives every day with a lot of limitations. Like when you can't see good and you're old and you can't balance good and you can't feel anything with your hands, and you can't drive, and when you do go where people stare at you and act strangely around you, you think, man, how, when that was happening, when that happened at the beginning of my dad's young life, you might have been able to ask the question, where is God? Where is a loving God who would allow this kind of gratuitous pain and suffering? And my dad, if he were here today to tell you, he's said it many, many times to me, and sometimes even here, would say to you this, I would not take it back. God used that in millions of ways. He's blessed others. He made me who I am. He gave me your mom through that. He gave me you through that. None of those things would have happened if I would not have gone through that gateway. And it's not just blustering, being a tough guy. It's just that his vision was probably very limited at those days, like what's going on. And it was funny because even then he was like, oh, God kept me alive. That's a miracle, so he must have something for me to do. I guess I'll die when I'm going to die. And ain't today. And, and he lived through that. Yeah, it was so funny. Like death can't kill him. It keeps coming around like, I'll kill you with a heart attack. And he's like, heart attack. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy. But the thing is that he has chosen to say, I believe that God is still good and is at work, even though way back here, it must have been impossible for anyone else to see. See, John's vision was very limited. Ours is too. Sometimes, have you ever had that experience where you're really depressed about something and then it turns around later and it turns out that it actually worked out really good? You're like, oh, wow, great. I wonder how many times God is actually at work in that we don't see beforehand. And we go, God, I don't know, this just doesn't fit, man. This puzzle piece doesn't fit. This doesn't look, where does this fit in the divine goodness and love and kindness, or that you care for me? The third thing that I think could be in play, you have assumptions of what God should do when he should do it. You have limited vision of not knowing that God may do something later. But the third one is this. It's the idea of life circumstances. When life gets really, really real, it can make it very hard for you to trust God. Because you just go, hang on, I didn't bargain for this. I thought things were going to be good. I thought things would be easier. I don't know why you're allowing this evil guy in North Korea to do this, or these guys in Africa to do this, or these people in the Middle East to do this. I mean, sometimes life circumstances happen and you just go, I can't fit this into any measure of goodness or any measure of God's power or love. And so as a result, I cannot see clearly. And so I look at this puzzle piece and I go, I don't know what this is or how this fits. This doesn't make any sense. And that's where John was at too. John was locked up. He was in prison. He was facing execution. They did execute John. And his circumstances made it because pain is so real. It gets your attention. The smallest little pain. You ever just been up in the middle of the night and separate your toes on the edge of the coffee table? That defines your world for a minute, man. That just defines your whole world. You become the split between two toes. And that's what pain does to us. And I hate to make light of it because some life circumstances are gigantic and horrible, and they're so overwhelming that, you just got to go, man, I can imagine how somebody in their pain would not be able to understand. And we face that in our own house, in our own life. And John was facing it in his. He was in prison. His dreams had not come true with the Messiah. He was facing execution. And he had been summarily rejected by all the people that he probably really hoped to influence. The people that were in power. He wanted to see reform. And he didn't see any of that happen. In fact, he didn't even see the end of it till he died. He died before Jesus did. But you know what? When Jesus came into the Father's presence after the cross, you know who he found there waiting for him? John. And you know what I bet John said? Hey, you know that thing I sent to you in the prison? Sorry, man. It's great. I see what you're doing now. Life circumstances make it very difficult to see what God is doing. It blurs the picture. Things don't seem to fit. So John sends these two guys to Jesus in verse 20. When the men came to Jesus, they said, John the Baptist sent us to ask a question. He has a question. Are you the one, or should we expect somebody else? Because you're not doing you're not doing your job. You're not obeying me, God. He's just saying, you're not doing what I think you should be doing. And so here's what Jesus' reply to that question is. Here's his answer. He doesn't say, yes, I am. Tell John, don't sweat it. I'll see you on the other side. Literally. He does not say that. It says, so Jesus replied to them, go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, just as Isaiah had said the Messiah would. The lame walk, just as Isaiah said the Messiah would. Those who have leprosy are cured. Sick people are made well, just as Isaiah said the Messiah would. The deaf hear, just as Isaiah said the Messiah would. The dead are raised. He had just raised a woman's son. And who knows how many other people that are not recorded in the Bible. And the good news is preached to the poor. The people who are marginalized, the people who are unloved, the people who are not valued because they don't have any money, they don't have anything to bring, they probably are being punished by God anyway, blah, blah. That's the way people thought in those days. And Jesus said, no, to those who are the downtrodden, the mistreated, those who have nothing, I bring to them good news, that there is something very real and present and bigger than the world that we live in, regardless of our poverty of health or poverty of money or poverty of even faith. That there's something bigger and more real, and that God in the midst was changing things. So here's his answer. Are you the one or not? And he goes, look, I may not be doing what you're doing, but look at what I am doing. Look what I'm doing. I may not be doing what you want for you right now. Believe me, I've got that. But he says, but look what I am doing. And for me, there was a huge revelation in this week, is that part of my when I get caught in the spin of I don't understand how all this stuff fits together, is recognizing I need to look further out. I need to have some peripheral vision instead of I can only judge by what you're doing in my life, the prayer that I don't feel like you're responding to for me. You're not doing what is expected, which is tripping me out. I need to look a little wider. It's so beautiful. Again, he brings this really beautiful, gentle non-rebuke to John because of his doubt. A few weeks ago, we talked about Thomas, who for 10 days did not believe that Jesus had raised from the dead, and he was just, it's all over. I doubt the whole thing. It was a big mess. It was all a lie. He's really confused, and Jesus shows up, and he goes, oh, I see. You're my king. You're my God. He understood then, but he didn't understand for 10 days. He didn't understand for 10 days. And he wasn't able to look further out than of all the things that Jesus did. He saw Jesus raise people from the dead at least on 3 occasions. At least on 3 occasions. I'd be pretty convinced. I'd be pretty unmovable, but Thomas wasn't. And what God doesn't do is he doesn't come along and go, hey man, see, you're just not good enough. He says, John is the greatest. And yet John had real doubts because he just could not see what was going on. He presumed God would do something different, or he had a different timing. His vision was limited. It's very interesting what he says. He says, look at what I am doing. I may not be doing what you want. I may not be freeing you from jail. That may be the way that you will end your life here and come into the next life. I may not be doing, he goes, but look what I am doing. Look at the people who've been healed. Look at the people who've been cared for that have been marginalized. Look at the teaching of Jesus and the love of Jesus, Chuck. When you're mystified by what's going on and you can't figure how this fits or how that doesn't fit, and everything is so difficult, do I tend to look outward or I only look inward? And I realize for me, my tendency is always to look inward, but you're not doing what I want. This is what you're doing, and this is what this is what you're doing, and this is what I want you to do. You're just like, you're being quiet about this issue. I've got a really sick daughter, Jesus. I know you're aware of that. I know you're aware of this, and this is what you're doing, and this is what I want you to do. Be healed, Carly, right? And really what that is it's kind of the sock puppet thing, right? I'm kind of like, Jesus, what I want to do is I want to make you my puppet, and I want you to speak healing to Carly so that I can get what I want instead of trusting you because I see what you're doing in a greater and wider work within the world. See, it's not academic to me, all this stuff. I mean, I don't know if you've got kids, but if you've got kids and they suffer, remember when if those of you were parents, remember when you had a little kid and a little kid was really sick, they even just like have a cold, and you're like, I'm going to die because it would, you're like, oh, heart attack, I need some heroin, I got to get out of here, you know what I mean? Maybe that's not your response. That would be Andrea's response when our kids were sick. I was a man of God and said, be healed in the name of... There is nothing worse than having a sick child. This week, my daughter came up to surprise Andrea. She popped in for about 12 minutes and made dinner and hung out. And my daughter's really sick. She had all these tests for 2 years. And it's not just she's sick. She's in pain that unless she's having a good moment or a good part of the day, that keeps her curled up on the bed in agony. For the last 2 years, she has been isolated most of the times. Newly married, can't enjoy her new marriage, can't work anymore, can't go to school anymore. She is bedridden, except for the times when she feels better. And it's weird, she'll be like good for like maybe a day or half a day. She's up, vibrant, she's all Carly, Facebook, and look, I'm doing great. Don't pray for me. Like, no, take pictures when you're in bed and you just look like you're half dead. She showed up and she's really, really, really thin. She didn't have any weight to lose, and she's lost a lot of weight. She's really pale. She's really weak. I don't know what the end result of this is going to be. I don't know. I really don't. And it is one of several extremely painful, challenging things that Andrew and I are going through. Like, it's kind of that reign of misery, of like lots of stuff that's going on at once. Really, really, really challenging. And the worst of it is watching my daughter not just be sick, but really suffer. And the quality of her life getting lower and lower. And the doctor saying, we have no idea what this is. We're back at square one. This is not academic to me. God, do you love us? We're serving you for whatever it's been, 30 some odd years. I mean, it's been about, let's do what Jesus would have us do, regardless of the cost to us personally. Jesus, we're trying to serve you. You're not doing what I want. you're not doing what I want right now. There aren't, it's not like I can just say, hey, I feel fine about everything just because I know that Jesus loves me. So, Jesus, do you love me? Jesus, do you have enough power to do anything? Maybe you love me, but you don't have the power. Maybe you have the power, but you don't love me. Maybe you're just unaware. Maybe you're too busy. You know what I know? None of that is true. I know that's not true. There's times where it feels like that's true, that Jesus is aloof, or he's unaware, or he's unavailable, or he's not real. And I know that that is not true because I've experienced him in super powerful ways. I believe that Jesus says, I will work all things for the good. It does not mean everything is good. Carly is really sick. That's not good. My dad has suffered greatly. That is not good. We have other things going on in our family life that are just so difficult. I have no idea how we're going to deal with it. But you know what? I know that he loves me. I know that he has a plan. And it is because I've seen him work in my life. I've seen him work in your life. I've seen him work in the lives of people that I've only met for moments. I know it. I've seen it. I've experienced it. And because of that, I wake up every morning and I pray for my daughter. And I pray with the hope that God will do what is right and good, even if that means that my daughter ultimately gets sicker and even were to die from this. I mean, honestly, in the puzzle of the Gerwig life, I don't know how that could fit to be good. I don't know how that could fit to be right. But I trust him. I trust him because I have seen him at work in my life and in the lives of others all around. I don't know what God wants to do with that situation. I don't know what he wants to do with the other situations in our life that are exceedingly difficult. I do know that I live with great hope and with this place inside of me of real joy, because I know that regardless of what happens in my life, no matter how things look on the outside, I know the truth of who is with me in it. Jesus says, look, Chuck, don't think just about the prison that you're in. Look outward. What am I doing? What is his answer? People are healed. People are loved. Those who are marginalized are cared for. I'm doing things, and you may not understand all the way everything fits. You may later. John didn't, I don't think. I think John entered the heaven of Jesus and was finally figured it out at that end. And I know that some of you are going through really, really difficult stuff, more than we are. So please don't hear me as being flippant or feeling like your pain isn't real, because it is. What I'm encouraging you to is to think about the worth of loving God and trusting him in the bigger picture of what he has done, even when the things around you don't make sense. There's a blessing in it. If you look at verse 23, the next verse down, Jesus says, and he says, tell this to John as he goes back. He says, blessed is the man or woman who does not fall away on account of me. He said, there's a blessing, something made fortunate in the one who does not fall away on account of what? Of Jesus himself. What he's saying here is he's like, John is tripped up by what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. He's mystified. He is puzzled. Okay, so I see you doing all this stuff. And by the way, Jesus, you're also hanging out with all these other people and you're eating and drinking. And John didn't do any of that. So he's like, I'm puzzled. I'm not sure what you're doing. And he started to get tripped up or stumble on what Jesus is doing. And he says, there's a blessing in this, the one who does not stumble upon me, but instead trusts that I, as the king who knows all and can do all, have a plan and I'm working it out, even when you're mystified in it. It's a cool word where the word here that's translated fall away, it's often translated stumble too, somebody who trips up. And it's a really important word because what he's saying is when Jesus doesn't do, or God the Father is not doing what you think, and you get tripped up by it, he says, don't do it. When things happen around you that you can't explain and they're mystifying to you, he goes, don't stumble over it. The word is a Greek word, skandalizo. You know what that means? It's the word that we get scandal from. He says, there is somebody who is fortunate and blessed. They're the one who is not scandalized by the fact that I eat and drink with sinners. He's the one who's not scandalized by the fact that Jesus doesn't always do what we want, because he is not a sock puppet. But he has a bigger plan and a better good and a greater good. And I look at that every single day, even the days when my daughter's with me and I have to watch her suffer. right? I don't remember what day it was. It was yesterday, I think it was, or Friday. She and I and Matt, my son-in-law, were all sitting out on the back patio. It was nice and warm. And I was like, come on, let's just go get out in the sun. Maybe it'll be better, because we'd been in the house and she'd woken up and was really, really sick. And I can still see her right now. We have like a little couch thing on our patio, and she was like curled up in a little ball, just kind of shaking, laying there in the sun, all pale and thin and really sick. And I remember thinking, Lord, I'll just repeat my prayer to you. I don't understand how this fits, but I trust you. I can't just make my faith about you're not doing this one thing. I've got to make my faith about looking wider out. What do you see and hear happening? What has been happening through the history of the world with Jesus? And continue to pray for that, because I know that he cares and loves. And with that, I can make it through the rest of my day, instead of wanting to just go back to bed or go drink a lot or be angry at God and just say, you know what, you're not doing what I want, so I'm mad at you. You're not doing it the way I want or when I want it, so I'm mad at you. So many times in my life, and I'm sure in yours, like with my father, who would have guessed all those years ago, 60-some years ago, that when this horrible thing happened to him, that God would use it, that he would be blessed, that he'd be a man of joy, that he would say, God has used this. I wouldn't even change it. Wouldn't even change it. He could never saw that then. And there's reason to trust and believe Jesus. And it goes much deeper than my personal pain and suffering. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about that. It just means that what he is doing is not what I want with that right now, and that's a mystery. How to do that? One is we first need to know that we don't know what we don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I know I've got limited vision. I know that pain makes it hard for me to see what's right, and I've got assumptions about what's best. See, my assumptions and what is reality often are untrue. Some of you know me enough to know that that is correct. My assumptions about things, my expectations about things are not always what is actually the best. And I know that Jesus always does do that and knows that. So I just need to know what I don't know. And when you're in a situation where you're mystified or you're puzzled by something and you don't know what to do, because you're like, I don't know why we're still out of work. I don't know why we're about to lose our home. I don't know why all these people are suffering in Africa because food cannot get to them, and because I don't understand all this. When you don't know how to do something, the best place to start is with something that you do know. When you're dealing with the unknown, the mystery of God, right? Where do you begin? You begin with what is known. If you were going to build a puzzle, luckily I just happened to get the right piece out of this puzzle. If you're going to build a puzzle and you just don't know even know where to begin, have you ever done that where you get a big puzzle, like, hey, let's do a puzzle, baby, and you put it all out on the table and you realize how many pieces there are that are just green, and you're just like, oh, why did we start this, right? What do you do? At least for me, here's how I start when I'm puzzled about something. I find the edges first, right? Because I don't know what everything's going on in the picture, but what I do know is I do know that if I find an edge and another straight line, one of them will fit. That's something I know. So where do you go? You begin with, when you don't know what's going on, you begin with something that you do know for sure. The other way you might do it is you might look for a couple of things. Hey, there's a picture of a lion. I see the back of a lion here. I see the tail of a lion. I see the head of a lion. And maybe you can get those pieces and you put together the parts that are familiar, the things that you know for sure, and then you work inward from there. And pretty soon you start finding, you ever get the thing where you're like, I cannot find this piece. I know it's missing. It's just not there. And the next day your child comes by and goes, clunk, I hate puzzles. Don't give us a puzzle. We won't do it. I hate them. I don't like puzzles because I don't like mysteries. I like everything to be solved. And that is my theology too. I want everything solved now to my assumptions so that my life circumstances are good, instead of recognizing God has a bigger picture. In a puzzle, you find the things that are familiar and then you move. For me, the place that I start when I'm mystified and I don't know what's going on and the picture doesn't make sense is I start at the cross. I start at the cross. And if you're around me very long, you'll hear me say this. Begin at the cross. Begin at the cross. The thing that I know incontrovertibly in my own life by my experience, by my study, by the effects of it, is that Jesus Christ came, He called it that he would live and that he would die on a cross to pay for all of my sins, to show the magnificent goodness and love and care of God for every human being that will say yes to it. I know that to be true. I've experienced him. I've seen the repercussions of it all around and all through history. I can begin there. It really is the corner piece of every puzzle for me. I don't know what's going on with Carla. I don't know whether it's going to change. I don't know who's going to marry my daughter, Jesse, but he better be at least as good as the guy who married Carly, because if not, I'm going to dig a hole, put him out in the forest and start over and get another guy, man. You know what I mean? My daughter could marry somebody really horrible. It could be really a bummer. I don't know what's going to happen with my dad and with his health. I don't know what's going to happen with Andrew's dad, who has dementia, and there's lots of difficulties with that. I don't know what's going to happen with my cousin Jackie, who's got cancer. I don't know. But here's what I know. I begin with the cross. Jesus, what do I know for sure? I know that you came. I know that you loved me enough to give your life for me. The scriptures are filled with this love story of the care of God. God, I can look at all these things I don't understand, but man, I begin here. I begin by knowing that you love me enough to die for me, that you have the power to resurrect. You have the power to resurrect me. I have limited vision. I have lots of assumptions. My expectations of you are that you will do what I want, and I don't know what's best. Beginning with the cross is the most important thing you could do. Jesus says, do this. Look around you at what I have done in the lives of others and through history. If you look only at the situation that you want dealt with, it can be very easy to say, well, God, since you don't deal with this situation or these three situations, I just refuse to believe you, which leaves you in the same place you were anyway, by the way. It doesn't help anything. We can find ourselves in a place where we just go, I just don't see any reason to believe that there is a God. When I look around and I see what God has done in your life and what he's done in your life, what he's done in your life, what he's done in Jerusalem, what he has done in Alabama, what he has done in the life of my father, what he's done in my own life. Jesus says, look further out and then wait, knowing that our vision is really narrow, and when you're suffering, you just want it to end. And that's where we're at with Carly. I just want it to end for her. I want her to be happy. I want her husband to know what it's like to have this vibrant, way too much energy, too cheery, annoyingly cheery blonde in his life. He doesn't get to experience that hardly at all. That's what I want. And I'm going to keep praying for that. You know why? Because I know that God tells me, ask and keep asking, seek and keep seeking, knock and keep knocking. And even if God decides, no, my desire, my will for Carly is that she will not be healthy, but I will work in that. I love him and I trust him because I begin at the cross. I don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense what that is, but I trust him because I begin at the cross. I know I can. So here's the wrap up of this story. In Luke 30, it says the Pharisees and the experts in the law rejected God's purpose. They had their own plan for God. They had an assumption. Jesus was not meeting it. It says, to what can I compare this generation? He's talking to the Pharisees, and this is what Jesus says. He goes, what are they like? He goes, they're like children singing in the marketplace and calling out to one another. We played flute for you and you didn't dance. We sang a dirge and you didn't cry. He's saying, look, I could just, no matter what's going on, I could come out and sing Celebrate Good Times, come on, and you didn't want to dance to it and celebrate because he's having dinner with the kooky people and he's having a beer with them and they're like, oh no, I don't know about that Jesus. Oh no, man. Celebrate Good Times. He goes, or we could sing a really sad song, like a really melancholy Sarah McLachlan song, like one of those really sad ones. And he goes, no matter what I do, I'm just not behaving in the way that somebody thinks I should. And he clarifies this in verse 33. He goes, look, because John came, he wasn't eating bread and he wasn't drinking wine, and you said he's a demon. He's got a demon. He's messed up. He says, but myself, the Son of Man, came eating and drinking. And they said, yeah, see, he's a glutton, he's a drunkard, and he's a friend of the tax collectors and those bad people. And Jesus was saying, and that is true. All right? He says, but no matter what, the assumptions that people have, they're going, you know what, you're just not behaving right. You're not doing what I want. And he says, no matter what, these people who had made up their mind, the Pharisees, had made up their mind about what Jesus should do and how he should do it and when he should do it. He said, man, no matter what we do, no matter what God sends to you, you're not willing to receive it because you've already decided what God is, how he should act, when he should do it. And then he finishes with these words. He says, but wisdom is proved right by all of her children. So he's saying, so look, maybe these guys are never going to believe in me. I never behave in the way that they want me to. He goes, the proof is in what is born out of this. And what was born out of Jesus' life, his death on the cross and his resurrection, is that people's lives have been transformed, millions upon millions. Millions of little old ladies have been cared for by people who thought this is what Jesus would do. Millions of people have planted orphanages, have gone and built wells for people who did not have water because they believed that this is what would Jesus do. The words and teachings of Jesus have transformed my life and the life of many of you too. And recognizing, guess what? Jesus, you were at work in this world. I don't understand all of it. But the wisdom of what he said and did has been proved out by not what he's done in my dad's life on the day that he was hurt, but by the fruit, the children that were born out of God's wisdom and allowing my father to go through what he went through. I know that my daughter Carly has had a super impact in this little college town that they were in, or this spot in this college in Utah, because she and her husband cling to Jesus, follow Jesus, love him and serve him, even though her life is horrible. And God has used it. Man, they just led about like 6 kids to Christ, including a bunch of Mormon kids who generally, aren't so interested. I mean, God is doing amazing things in showing love and blessing. And man, that's part of his plan. That is part. The wisdom of God is proved out by her children, and you have to let children grow up. What your children are now, if you think they're really awful cute, maybe they really are. You're not going to think so in 12 years. Don't come crying to me about it. But in another 12 years or another 15 years, when you look at somebody's in their 20s or 30 years, then you begin to see, wow, you begin to see what was really born. It wasn't just the cute little one. There's a little cute little monkey child, right? And it wasn't just the demon at 12 years old who wrecked your car. 12 years old, that would only be Dave Clark that drives cars at 12 years old, actually. That's another story. Was it double the speed limit? Wasn't that the game? Yeah. Like 12 years old with Omar in the car playing double the speed limit on 17. There is a God. Yeah. Children, it's not who is born, it is what is grown up that prove who they are. And that is true with Jesus and your maturity of your faith with him. It is also true of what God is doing in the world and around you. Jesus is blessed is the one who doesn't fall away, who doesn't stumble over what I do or what I'm not doing. He says, look wider. Look wider. Trust greatly. And again, I'm not being flippant because I have to do that every morning when I get up and I think of my little daughter who's really probably going to spend the day curled up in a ball, holding her stomach, not eating, and getting thinner and sicker. And I trust him. And I love him because I begin at what I do know, and that's the cross. And there's a whole bunch of other little pieces around it that fit into in my life and the lives of people around me. And I'm not going to try to hold God hostage by saying, I'm just not going to believe you and I'm not going to love you because you're not doing what I want. When you do, I'll worship you. And that same kind of doubtful temptation is there in the life of John. He's in there in the life of many really godly people. And Jesus says, wisdom is proved right by her children. Look wider. Begin at the cross and trust me. I'm going to invite you right now. There's somebody's going to pass around some puzzle piece. I'm going to invite you to all take one of these. One side has some kind of a little picture on it that may or may not be discernible. The other side is blank. And for many people, to be honest, when you get enough pain, you begin to think, the whole stinking puzzle's blank. It's all like this. It's like 1,000 pieces of this, God. I am mystified about everything. And that's simply not true. It's simply not true. But it is also simply true that there are many pieces that are like this, and we can't make anything out on one side and the other side seems blank. I'm going to invite you to grab one as they pass these around. Take it home with you. I'm not going to invite you to do anything with it right now. But what I am going to do is I'm going to invite you to sit down and pray over it and think, what are the things where I'm mystified about God and I just don't know what he's doing? And I'm going to invite you to ask yourself the question, as I think about what God has done bigger and wider than just the situation, even if it's horrific, do I believe that God is trustworthy or that he's faithful? And what I invite you to do is on the blank side, do what I did this morning as I was praying about this and thinking about Carly and thinking about stuff with some other family members that are having some real serious stuff that I just don't know what to do with or what's going to go on with. And I just wrote the word faithful on it because he is, and I trust him. I know that based on the cross, based on what I've seen all around me. So I just wrote the word faithful on it. In fact, I made the T as a cross because, it seemed really cute. And then I noticed the F, the cross beams of the F, and the top of the F became like nails. And I wrote on it, and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this, and I'm going to tape it up on my mirror so I can see it every morning so that I am reminded not just of my daughter's pain, of the complications with my aging father and father-in-law, with my cousin who's sick, with many friends who are sick, with world issues, and I'm going to look at it every day to remind myself the part that I can't understand, he is faithful. He's been faithful. He's always been. He always will be. You will not be the first one he's been unfaithful to. And I know that for some of you, that's a great challenge because you're really going through hard times. And as a fellow sufferer and concerned human, please do not understand me as making light of your pain, or that God says it's no big deal. It's a big deal. But he is bigger. And so you can either trip and stumble over Jesus and what he's doing or not doing, or you can just fall into his arms and just go, I'm just going to trust you on this because I don't see how it can work, but I see everything else that you're doing. Let me pray. Band's going to come up and lead us in worship. Jesus, I thank you so much that you've been really steadfast in helping Andrew and I to really trust you in this, which I'm recognizing even this week is really my greatest challenge, my greatest sadness, the thing that weighs most on me. I thank you that in the midst of that, I experience joy and peace because I just know what I know about you. And so, Lord, I pray, even though there's times it's just really difficult and really unhappy, I thank you that we can live with the peace and confidence in you, regardless. I pray, Father, that through your Spirit, that you might let these words take hold in all of those who really wonder when things just the picture doesn't seem clear and incomplete, and you're not doing what we think you should. For those who struggle the most, Lord, I pray with thankfulness for your grace that you bring us along through that. You don't destroy us or reject us. And I pray that you, through the power of your Spirit, would give us something just enough to recognize about you to get our fingernails on, that we might cling to you in all the uncertainty and all the difficulty of the world that we're in. And we thank you for the truth of the matter is that this world is passing, and the new and real world where you live, where you are seen and experienced, and where it is right and good and all that we could imagine, we thank you that that is the truth of the reality, and you came and died and rose from the dead to prove that what you said was true about it. We thank you for that bright future and for your comfort now, and ultimately for your little wins all over the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.